Hello and welcome to the Midcoast Scuba Podcast. In this episode, we're on location in beautiful Bonaire in the Dutch Caribbean. My good friends Patrick Danko, Blake Nuss, and I all traveled down to do some training dives with TDS, Technical Dive Services Bonaire, and we're going to talk to Zack Richardson, the proprietor of that operation, and discuss what makes Bonaire so special, not only for recreational diving, but for technical dive training. So I hope you really enjoy the episode, and please tune back in for more.
Circus is coming through. Everybody knows that when you purchase a ticket, you expect to get a show. Take a look at me. I'm just a clown.
All right, welcome to the Mid-Coast Scuba Podcast, remote edition. This is the first time I've ever taken it on the road. We are in Bonaire, 2023, December. My second time here. Also got my buddy Blake Nuss. It's his first time here. My buddy Patrick Danko. And then the native, Zack Richardson with TDS Bonaire. Zach, we met, I think, 3 years ago in Cave Country, right?
Yep.
That was a fun and interesting week.
Yeah.
I was still a story the first time I was, told these guys the first time I met you. I was like, yeah, Zach stayed with us in Cave Country while you were becoming a chop instructor at that time, right?
Yeah, I was getting ready to do my Optima instructor training, and I told Lamar, I was like, I really don't know any place to stay. Do you have any suggestions? And he said, well, let me put you in touch with who your students are going to be. And that was kind of how it all happened.
Yeah, and I apologize for all that. Yeah, no, because the funny part, we were in this cramped little Airbnb, and I was finishing up my full cave. Chris and Scott were doing they were getting their Choptimas at that time. And we were all in this little Airbnb, and I felt so bad because you were sleeping in the garage. but you were like, you guys keep the house too cold.
Yeah, I was blasted out by the air conditioning, and it was warmer in the garage, so I ended up moving my air mattress out there. And I think it was pretty funny the first night because everybody was just like, wait, he was there. Like, the bed's gone and he's gone.
Someone took him in the night.
Couldn't handle this anymore. Well, I think you got away from Scott snoring too. Of course, Scott was sleeping on that little ass futon. That thing was tiny. Then last year, I'd never been to Bonaire before. Chris and Scott had, and we reached out to you and said, hey, let's go down there, and we did our helitrox with you last year, which was awesome. And I fell in love with Bonaire. I definitely am back and will be back again and again and again. But tell me a little bit, tell everybody who listens about TDS and your operation here.
So, my wife and I, we bought our shop back in 2020. It was originally started by Chris and Astrid Verstappen. We bought it January 1st of 2020, and talk about a surprise because...
Oh man, what a time to buy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. 2.5 months later, the pandemic happened. But we ended up making it through that, and it's just been really interesting, watching the business grow. I feel like we're kind of in a really unique time in diving. You're seeing a lot more people get into closed circuit rebreathers than ever before, and I'm just really, really excited to be kind of part of all that's happening and stuff.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I haven't been everywhere there is to be in the world, but I can't think of very many places where it's not more pleasurable to put hours on your unit, right?
Yeah, I definitely have to say with pretty much all of our diving being accessible from shore, you have the freedom to dive by yourself without a guide. It really provides, in my opinion, some of the best opportunities for training and for gaining experience.
Yeah. So we're back again with you for more training. Patrick and I came down to do our Mod 2 course with you, which was fantastic. And Blake is joining the rebreather ranks as well.
Yep.
So what did you think about your Choptima course this week, Blake?
Well, I was glad that, I'd talked to you guys and people that had been through it before and knew that first day was going to suck. And, so I wasn't too terribly discouraged because, it did suck.
Yeah.
It was a whole new learning experience, and then you kind of start thinking and, what do I need to do here? And, kind of starts falling together and putting together. By no means am I good yet, but, I'm getting there, but it's good. It's really freeing, not worrying about the gas as much, even though on my last training dive I did run out of O2, but I flew it as long as I could until the PO2 dropped, and then I just bailed. And I was trying to run it as a semi-closed unit at that point in time, but just my fancy at 20 feet, it's kind of hard to keep that, so I just bailed out. But yeah, it's awesome.
We got to dive with you today. All three of us got to dive today after the end of all of our courses. First time three of us got to dive together with you on a rebreather, and it's solid.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I obviously wasn't sitting in on your class, but great job to Astra and TDS teams. Man, got alongside you and we hung together. Man, you look like a seasoned pro in it. So
Appreciate that.
Yeah. And then Patrick and I, as I mentioned before, we did our Mod 2 with you, and that was an awesome course. Really cool. I'm tired. We were talking the other day. I was like, just can't imagine you do this every day, 7 days a week. I'm like, man, I'm so dog-ass tired.
just the physicality of moving the gear around, filling the gear, moving the gear, getting in the water, getting out of the water.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the physicality of it. Just it does add up. Not to mention then the dives.
Yeah.
It does a little bit, but I think it's kind of like, running, if you're doing it consistently, it's kind of easy.
Just get some.
I always would figure that with everything I would do that I would be in better shape than I am, but just comes with the territory. But yeah, really glad you guys enjoyed the course, and I mean, you guys definitely earned it, and it always makes it really fun when students come prepared, serious to learn, because I mean, this is what it's supposed to be about at this level.
Yeah, right.
Learned a lot, lots of great tips. There's the academics and the training materials. There's the standards and the skills we had to do, which were all super valuable. But I learned a lot just with your knowledge and expertise. The tips and the tricks as we were driving to the dive site, the debriefs. Hey, here's some things you might think about doing a little differently, or approaching from a different perspective, and that's to me, it's like gold. Coming to learn from someone who's been there, done that, and had also some really good training yourself to pull in from. So you're kind of sucking in the wisdom from the whole tree a little bit along the way, which has been fantastic. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say thanks for saying that. And I mean, I've been really fortunate with some of the people I've got to train with, and it's all about us all becoming better divers, so that way we can enjoy what we're doing safely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I've always I know there's people that kind of settle in on one instructor and they tend to go throughout their whole career with them, but I've always been a pretty big proponent of, there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat, and a lot of times there should be some diversity in your instruction, because you're going to learn those little tricks,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I definitely have started making it part of, just every year that I want to take a course with a different instructor. I'm hoping next year to actually do a GUE fundamentals course. I can't say I'm actually going to go the whole GUE route, but just to have the experience. And then, of course, it's like yeah, I'm starting to run out of things to do as far as on the tech side and everything. So I'm even, looking at considering doing like a free diving class, just something to hear something different from a different instructor that, like you said, I might be able to offer that to my students as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, kind of just what somebody that's never been to Bonaire before, what would you say is the biggest draw for a tech diver wanting to come to Bonaire?
I definitely, like I said, I think the freedom to be able to dive whenever you want really helps a lot. You can reach any depth here. I know sometimes depending on where you're training, you might be limited on what the environment can actually provide.
Yeah.
So we kind of have all of it here. We're definitely not the mecca as far as wrecks and caves like that, but the fact that, if you wanted to wake up at 3 a.m. and go do a 4-hour dive on your rebreather, you can do that here. You really just have the freedom. And then, of course, like I said, with us doing everything from shore, I've seen this happen in the Florida Keys. It's like you have an equipment issue. You're not ready to get on the boat. There goes your day of training. As opposed to here, we pretty much just take care of everything and get right back into the water. We have the freedom to do that. Nobody's ever pressured or rushed into doing things, and so we can focus on trying to do everything, quality and safely.
Yeah. Well, and I'll throw out the other side of it for being a Midwest diver is that I did every dive this week in shorts and a sharkskin rash guard. And that was awesome. All the way down to, I was looking at my computer on our dive on the Windjammer, all the way down to 196, and the coldest they got was like 79 degrees.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
As a Midwest diver, it is refreshing in a good way to be able to say, hey, I went through this whole Mod 2 course without putting, anything on more than a lava cord top and some tech shorts.
Yeah.
Because I remember my deepest dive I did in Beaver Lake, it's the middle of summer, 115 feet, and it's 48-degree water. So, I mean, it's big.
Well, and it's miserable putting on equipment for 48-degree water when it's 102 degrees outside.
Well, and it's definitely one more aspect that you have to add as far as safety, thinking, planning out, and especially when you're trying to learn something, like a rebreather or technical diving, just eliminating, bad visibility and coldness, I think those are things that everybody wants, and
That made a big difference in my training, is just being able to not have to worry about the environment or anything like that. I was warm, everything was fine. I wasn't fiddling with a wet suit or dry suit or anything. It's just comfortable and just focus on the dive. So
Going back to what you said about the equipment thing, I think all of us had a few little equipment issues through the week, which is kind of normal. But man, boy, it was amazing to be able to have, like on mine, one of the examples I had my MAV go out on mine, and you're just able to, like, literally right before the dive, take it apart, look at it, okay, no go, let's swap it out, and let's get in the water. If we were out on a boat offshore and that happened, it could have just been, well, that's it.
Yeah.
Being able to just address that in about 15 minutes, get it solved, be in the water, and appreciate all the help you offered with all the spares and all the backups and all the on-site repair, which is fantastic. But
helped me out a lot.
Well, all of us. I felt like there was a black cloud over. But start with me on Sunday. Patrick and I are going to do just kind of a shakedown dive, and I realized my dumb ass left my retaining nut for my EAC on my bench at home. Thank you for saving me there. But it's like you said, if we were on a boat, would have been, well, I would obviously have it built before we get on the boat, but the fact that repairs are literally feet away from the entry, right? It's awesome.
Well, and working with an outfit who's got, you sort of seem to have this never-ending supply of parts just on hand to be able to solve problems with. It makes a big difference, right?
Yeah, it's not quite never-ending, but I feel like I've seen a few things, and you learn to be prepared, especially living here in the Caribbean too, because Dive Right and Dive Gear Express isn't just a couple days shipping.
Yeah.
So, kind of pivot back to you, Blake. What is your favorite thing about the rebreather now that you're a rebreather diver?
Like the gas, not worrying about it anymore. I mean, I'd heard that, I'd heard that it's, really quiet and stuff, and then actually being underwater and being able to hear, everything. And the wildlife, like getting like today when we were leaving Salt Pier, I literally got right next to a sea turtle and just followed him up when he came up to surface, and he wasn't even, and we saw that same turtle when we were leaving, and he was pretty close to us until I added a little squirt of air in my DC, and he took off.
Yeah.
And so just that, being able to get right up to wildlife and game and stuff, and I like taking pictures underwater, so this is going to make a big difference in that. So.
Yeah. So, as far as like your students, are you seeing a major uptick in people getting into rebreathers for the first time?
Yeah, I especially have to say with the Choptima coming out too, like it really has kind of caught the market of people that probably would have never considered a rebreather. The fact that it ties into whatever your core configuration is. Generally buying the unit and the training ends up costing less than just the purchase of most back mount rebreathers these days.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the training I think is just getting a lot better. I know like when I first got into diving, hearing about rebreathers, they were like these voodoo death anesthetic machines,
Yeah.
And we all seem to kind of know a little bit better than that now. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I definitely think rebreathers are definitely starting to become more and more popular. Definitely also too with the continued rising cost of helium, just deep open circuit diving is just not becoming viable anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I've not the most experienced rebreather diver out there, but I've kind of maintained my thought on it is as long as you don't get complacent, I feel safer on it than I do on open circuit because I've got options and time, right?
Yeah.
It's just as long as you stay on top of it and you don't get complacent and ignore the unit. Yeah.
As long as you got good planning, right?
Yeah.
Kind of having good training
Mm-hmm.
and having a good plan that gives you those, the options in case things go wrong.
Yeah.
And also gave me that option, like if you're thinking you're going down the tech route, like I was, because I know I'm really interested in deep wreck diving, and so for me it was like I'm about to spend thousands of dollars to go do my NDP on open circuit, and I know I'm eventually going to go rebreather, so it's like why spend the money on that, then come back and then have to turn around and do other training on that, just start with a rebreather, get my hours, and then do my my Helitrars deco and be good to go.
Yeah, so on the Mod 2 course, the dive we did at Red Slave on the anchors and of course the Windjammer, those two dives for me was worth the price of admission. That was so awesome. It's so I wonder if most people realize how deep the reefs actually go. I mean, you get this, well, I think most people have this mental picture that the reef stops. Because you hear, like, we're all open water instructors too. We always tell students 95% of everything to see is at 50 feet and above. That's not really the truth, right? I was just kind of blown away at just how much stuff there was to see when we were over at Red Slave on those anchors, and just one anchor after another, after another, after another.
I mean, both. I was impressed both by the sea life. To your point, that reef just kept going.
Yeah.
Kept going.
Yeah.
I mean, a little bit on what you're talking about, the ability just to go not very far offshore and get to more or less whatever depth you want is amazing. And then to have that combination of sea life, things to see on that descent, things to see as you're doing your deco, swimming back up, there's a reef to see. It's not just an anchor line you're hanging on, it's not just a sand hill. But then down at the bottom, the history, I think things I love about diving is you're accessing these kind of hidden, underwater museums that have captured some piece of history at some point. And I don't know how many anchors we passed on that dive, half a dozen anchors, and then tying that to the history on shore. And it's just such I think it's a special thing to see the history frozen there in time. I think the Windjammer was the pinnacle of that. Just this, you can almost kind of think back around what happened as this boat sank and kind of rolled down and landed, and everything that happened with what was on that ship is fascinating. Getting to see just a little small glimpse of that, super special.
Yeah, so that was the other deal that I was very appreciative of this week, Zach, was the stories and the car ride to the dive sites. You just know so much about the island and everything that goes on here. Could you kind of recap the story about the Windjammer and what that wreck is, how it ended up where it's at?
Yeah, so there's a couple different stories with the Windjammer as far as how she sunk or why she sunk. Her original name is actually the Mari Bon, but basically she was hauling a cargo of tar, was supposed to be going on the way to Tobago, and apparently they had encountered a storm, and so they came into the bay right there to try to sit it out. They had thrown anchors and were just waiting. The ship was apparently broadsided by a wave, and when it was picked up, it was rolled over on the reef. Apparently it sat there on the reef for actually a little bit of time. There used to be apparently a small fishing village there, and the locals had came and got like most of the brass nails, things like that they could have valued from the boat. And then one day it just apparently slipped down the reef.
Wow.
It apparently was completely forgotten about until BOPEC started surveying the area to put the fuel depot up there, and then they found the mast that was up there on the plateau and ended up falling it down to finding the wreck. There's a little bit of, like I said, another story that supposedly the boat was purposely scuttled for insurance reasons, but again, there's no proof of any of this, and like any thing with the ocean, boats, fishing, it seems like there's always some tales of lore with it too. But the thing that was really interesting was when the ship hit the bottom of the reef, the tar came out of the boat, it spread across the seafloor, which you guys saw, kind of looks like molten lava. And then also within parts of the wreck, the tar is frozen in time. Apparently it was determined by Walter Stark, who was credited for bringing tech diving here to Bonaire, the first person to really be doing it here. He had did some measurements of the tar field and determined that it still moves like a couple inches every year.
That's crazy.
It was amazing to drop down on that. Having heard a little bit of that history again on the way out there, such great kind of recon on what we're about to see, and then that just sort of appearing out of the dark, you approach it, and then seeing the tar just sort of cascading down off the boat. You can almost envision sort of what was happening as it is, sitting there on the bottom. It's really cool. I think to me, that's one of the reasons I dive. It's like I want to see some of the history, some of the, connections with the things that they're kind of lost, that you don't really get an opportunity to see. And
Absolutely.
I think this course that we took was just let you unlock a little bit more, a little bit more of that history, a little bit more of those opportunities. So so cool.
And it's another thing too that like with Zach, like hanging out with this guy has cost me a lot of money. Rebreather, all that, and now I'm hearing all these stories about the Windjammer and all this stuff, so I'm already planning on coming back and, getting started on Deco and then coming back and doing Mod 2 eventually, so just more stuff to look forward to.
Yeah. Well, so just for the purpose, since there's no video, you're going to have to, you just call me Haddock, because we got two Zacks in here. Yeah. So, the tar field down there was just surreal. Like I'd seen pictures and video and stuff like that. But it's like you're never prepared until you actually see it, right?
No, and that's the other thing. Like, you know, I've taken many people there that have captured a lot of different footage and stuff, and you just cannot capture the magnitude of the wreck, of everything that's going on, you know, like not the way that you can see it with your own eyes. And
yeah, I wasn't prepared either for how big that ship is.
Yes.
It's like, ooh.
That was the thing that hit me, and this is something I love about diving. Okay, I'm expecting to see something based off of a preconceived notion around maybe what happened, but then having this thing just sort of appear out of the deep as you approach it, and in this case, the sense of scale all of a sudden hits you. You're like, this is a big boat.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a significant boat
with big frickin' anchors.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we took off from the. So, just to kind of recap, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Zach. So we get down, we come up on the bow of the boat, right off the front. We come around the corner. This is where we first see this big tar field coming out of the side of the boat. We swam all the way back down to the stern, turn, come back, kind of peek inside, and then we came back up over the top of the boat, swam down the length, and then we turned. And we're just kind of start swimming off, and I'm like, where the hell is he taking us? And then I saw those big ass anchors. I was like, whoa, they were massive.
yeah,
They're massive.
really, really huge. They're really interesting too because I've never seen anchors that were made out of beam iron like that. And then it's even interesting because the ship itself had an anchor that was on deck when it sank, which I showed you guys. And the one that's on deck is, you know, reminiscent of like the ones you find in Red Slave, you know, like they look very identical, same construction. So yeah, those other ones, I wish I knew more about them and stuff, but yeah, very big, very impressive to see.
Yeah, those were cool.
Maybe picking up on that, you know, our dive on Red Slave, which I agree with your assessment. That was such a great dive. Big, you know, beautiful scenery, beautiful reef, some great fish, and I appreciate, by the way, kind of pointing out some of the kind of unique and more special fish. There was some stuff we saw that was gorgeous, but then just anchor after anchor of you know, things that were really tied back to some of the interesting, sad, you know, but I mean, something you want to understand and appreciate the history that related to the salt fields up top. So having a little bit of that history lesson on the drive down was awesome.
Yeah, can you touch off on so salt is Bonaire's primary commodity, right?
As far as I know, it's the only thing that we export now. I know back in the early days, they used to export aloe vera, castor beans as well. And I think the locals used to also make like lime powder. They would actually burn like the coral skeletons after like with the dead coral they would collect, and then they were able to pulverize it. But yeah, I think right now salt's pretty much it, but they've been doing it obviously since the beginning of time. And basically that was how, you know, Red Slave was formed. Those are the historical salt pans that the slaves had worked in the early days of Bonaire. And then of course that whole area was where the ships came and picked it up, and hence the reason all the anchors are there.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, there's so many of them down there. It's just like, holy crap, just doing rough, fuzzy math in your mind, you just think of how many ships were coming in and out of there and grabbing salt, right?
Yeah, it was a big export. I wish I could remember the person's name, but it was like a prime minister or whatever. Like there was apparently like a lot of ships that were lost in it, and he was who like developed the production as far as like putting the obelisk, you know, signifying like the anchoring spots, putting the ballards on the shore that the ships would tie to, so if the anchor went over the reef, it didn't pull the ship down, you know, just things like that that really pushed the salt production forward on Bonaire.
Yeah.
And today we, you know, for kind of a post-graduation dive for the three of us, went to Salt Pier, which is literally just right in that same area, the modern production facility for assault and got to dive around the pier, which was just absolutely fantastic for looking at sea life. I mean, it was gorgeous. But to see the contrast of the history back in the day when, you know, literally slaves working those salt pans, and then to see the modern equivalent of that, it's really interesting.
Well, and talking about being a salt pier and then touching off on being a rebreather and getting close to wildlife, I'm following Patrick, and he goes, hey, come here, take a look. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a pretty big pair of fish. So I get my GoPro out, and I start coming up really close to it, and I look up, and he goes, no. I was like, oh, there's an eel, and I look down, and it's literally like it could have just come right up my face. It's like, okay, yep, there it is.
Yeah, there's so much wildlife here, you can almost run over or something looking at something else.
Yeah, right. That's almost.
I mean, so often you go places and you feel like, okay, I've got to cover a lot of territory to see what I want to see, and that was like Salt Pier's a great example.
Yeah.
I could have spent a whole dive just hanging around some of those piers, just seeing all the different sea life there. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, and definitely with us not having big pelagics here, I think it teaches people to just slow down a little bit, because, you know, it is all really, really small stuff here, and we do have tons of it. The slower you go, the more of it you're going to see for sure.
You pointed out there was a cherub angelfish, right? And the midnight parrotfish that we saw when we were doing our deco. It's just gorgeous, but slowing down, taking the time to appreciate those little, you know, the small, especially the small ones. It's just such an important life lesson. Slow down and appreciate what's right in front of your face.
Yeah, like on several of our deco stops where we were just kind of hanging out over the sand, like you, at first you think you're just staring at barren sand, and all of a sudden you see like, oh, there's this entire little kind of micro world there, little tiny little crab carrying a shell going around. It's really cool. So TDS Bonaire stands for Technical Dive Services, correct?
Yes, technical diving services.
So what all services do you offer?
So pretty much we teach obviously technical diving, anything from open circuit, rebreather. We also offer rebreather support or just tech support for people that want to do technical diving. Though tech diving is our main focus, we still also offer teaching and services available for recreational divers as well too. Because let's face it, I don't think any of us started out as tech divers. You know, we gotta feed it.
Yeah. And located in Captain Don's habitat, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I kind of lean on you because you're such an awesome historian for Bonaire. Tell me about Captain Don, because he's kind of the father of the diving industry, right?
Yeah, he really was. So Captain Don, I don't know exactly when it was he came to Bonaire. I'm terrible with remembering dates, but you know, he kind of came here on a sailboat. And at first when he was diving here, he was actually just collecting fish for the reef aquarium trade. But then he kind of started noticing some of the fish that he collected, you know, they were becoming fewer and fewer just from his actions, and he kind of became an environmentalist at that point and really started embracing diving and teaching people to dive. But yeah, he is basically who's credited for bringing diving to Bonaire.
Yeah. Well, and I know I've told just about every student that I've worked with since I first came here, they'll ask, you know, where's your favorite place to go? So Bonaire, like, it literally is diving. That's what this place is, right?
Yeah, Captain Don called this place the home of diving freedom, and I really think he was right with that. Like I said, you can dive whenever you want, however you want.
When just driving up and down, you know, it was really eye-opening for me. You look at the map of kind of dive sites, and it feels endless. It feels like you just go up and down the coast, checking out dive site after dive site, and it's the number of shore diving sites here is just, it's inspiring. It's like, it makes you want to come back and like, I haven't done that one yet. Let's go check it out.
I found it interesting too, like getting on the plane, like, you know, going to Cozumel or something, you might see another diver or something on the plane, but then when I got on the plane to come on here, I looked around and everybody's got scuba gear and scuba shirts and everything. You're like, man, this whole plane's full of divers.
Yeah, the plane ride here is an interesting one, especially if you've never been exposed to it. I remembered when Lucia's mom came here, you know, it was the same thing. She said, she's like, I've never been on a plane where there were so many people just talking about diving.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, I can't imagine how long it would take you to dive every site here. It would. I don't know. You'd have to live here.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is like there's so many spots in between the dive spots too, you know, like, I mean, you know, anywhere you want can basically be a dive spot here on Bonaire, you know, you just got to be able to find a way in and out of the water pretty much, but.
Yeah. So, and, you know, it's not terrible, right? I mean, it can be, but.
We've got a couple little spots, but that's the thing, if you're mindful of them, you know, not an issue, you know, like that's the other thing that makes it so great here.
Yeah.
It's not difficult navigating. If you think you are lost, do your safety stop and take your head to the surface, you know, you're going to find out where you need to go pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, you've definitely got the navigation figured out. Patrick and I were talking about that the other night too. Like, I had no idea where we were. It felt like we'd swim forever and be like, boop, there's what we were looking for, and boop, right back to the truck.
Yeah, when you've got 30, 45 minutes of deco and got a little bit of current, kind of going back and forth on the reefs, it's easy to get sort of consumed by the scenery and you sort of, your mind wanders, okay, where exactly am I? And boy, we popped up every single time where we needed to be.
It was awesome. Yeah, so there's actually a lot of conservationists here on Bonaire too, right? Isn't Lucia pretty active with the coral?
Yeah, so we have a Reef Renewal Foundation here on Bonaire, and they've actually done some really, really amazing things. Unfortunately, our reefs all over the world, you know, are definitely in danger right now, but Bonaire, apparently, before I was ever here, the shallows were completely covered with staghorn coral, and a lot of the dive sites, you know, you see the rubble, the remnants of it in the sand. And Reef Renewal's actually done a really, really good job doing outplantings in areas and having a lot of success with the staghorn coral. And yeah, my wife is a member of it as well, very active in it. And it's just really great that, there are people that are trying to do what they can to protect our reefs, because I think with a lot of people it's just out of sight, out of mind, and nobody thinks it's a real problem.
Yeah. So you teach a lot of different tech classes. What's your favorite tech class to teach?
Man, that's a good question. You know, I probably have to say side mount and CCR. I think it's just really nice, you know, like, because people generally come into these courses sometimes a little apprehensive, unsure if they can do it. And I really like bringing people to that level of them having confidence in their ability and realizing, like, no, this isn't beyond my grasp, or this isn't only just for really super advanced, you know, cave divers. So I really enjoy getting to do that with people.
Is side mount kind of your preferred go-to configuration, or?
Not really. I honestly don't have a preference. I've always been somebody that, you know, everything's just a tool in the toolbox, you know, and not everything's right for, you know, the right job, you know, like, I wish I could say there was a one-size-fits-all when it comes to scuba diving, but every environment's different, and I think that's the biggest thing I really love is when you go dive someplace else and you see, like, procedures that people do, you know, and sometimes you're just like, I wouldn't even try doing that in my environment, but it makes total sense here, you know.
Yeah.
I think for me, as we went through our Mod 2 course, I mean, I don't know, this is probably true of a lot of things, but the more more complexity you add to your system, the more little changes, little tips, little tricks, little adjustments can really make a big impact on how you're diving, not just maybe how your trim is or how you handle a certain skill, but learning some of those little tips and tricks through that training from people who've been there, done that. I was having this issue and I changed this up, and on our class when we were doing our back drills, shooting a DSMB, just the little trick of put your hand through the loop, grab your reel, pull it through. Little things that make what is a simple task maybe sounding, when you're task loaded, bailed out, worrying about your scent, whatever. Okay, how do I make this simple and easy? There's a lot of notes that I took along the way, so I appreciate the wisdom there. And that's, to me, the sign of a good course, when I have I've got a lot of things I can take back and either adjust my setup, adjust my procedures, or things to practice that I learned. And boy, I've got a lot of notes from the class this week.
Yeah.
Well, and I wish I could say I could take credit for all these things, but pretty much everything I passed on to you guys are things that have been taught to me, and some of them were things, yes, I learned them the hard way, and then you find out it's like, oh, actually a lot of people have been doing it this way, you just didn't know about it. And, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah, very cool. So, going back to rebreathers, your back mount Optima instructor, chest mount Optima instructor, and then are you getting a new unit as well?
Getting ready to cross over to the Fathom Gemini as well. I really, really love my Optimas. I honestly can't say enough good things about them. Just as far as just trying to be a diverse instructor, I feel like, it seems to be the split between rebreathers is ECCR and MCCR, and so I wanted to be able to offer something in that field to my customers, and it just seemed like it was the right rebreather for me.
So for the lay person that may be listening, explain the difference between ECCR and MCCR.
So basically in ECCR, you have a solenoid that you pick a desired set point, and it maintains the partial pressure for you. An MCCR usually uses some type of a mass flow orifice, or like the Geminis that we're getting actually use a needle valve system in them. But the idea is that it trickles a small amount of O2 in, and then as the diver, it's up to you to manually add O2 to bring the PO2 up on it. Different philosophies. I think a lot of it maybe depends on what you're trying to do. As I always tell people, rebreathers are built on a concept, and you really have to look at what the original designer of this rebreather was trying to accomplish with building it, and does this actually apply to the type of diving that you do?
Yeah. And so is the Fathom Gemini, that's a side mount rebreather, right?
Yeah. I don't know if this is kosher to say this, but you could say it's a copy of the KISS Sidewinder, just without the problems of the KISS Sidewinder.
Yeah. So in the needle valve, is that so you can fine tune it to your kind of personal consumption rate?
Pretty much. It's supposed to be able to adjust to your metabolic rate. Supposed to kind of make the MCCR a little bit more fine tuned to you.
Yeah.
With the traditional mass flow ones, you have to kind of swap out those mass orifice valves depending on what you determine your metabolism rate, right?
I wish I could tell you more about that, Patrick. I'm not very, very experienced about it, so I'm not going to pretend that I do know about it. From what I understand, though, there is like an adjustment with the mass flow orifice, and of course, that's something that's figured out with your instructor and you and your training.
Yeah. That's very cool. I don't see me crossing over anytime soon, but I would love to try a side mount rebreather just to see what it's like. But I'd try any rebreather just to see what it's like. Patrick and I were actually talking this morning about, he's got the back mount Optima, I've got the chest mount Optima. We're like, can't believe we've never actually just traded and see what it's
I
like.
think a lot of it's just always a safety thing too, like you want to do the right thing,
Right.
as much as it just seems like, oh yeah, just try my rebreather and stuff, you'd hate for something to happen to your buddy or to yourself and be like, well, that was not what we planned on this morning when we woke up.
Well, that's a fair point, because you have to have unit-specific training on a rebreather, right?
Generally, yeah.
Yeah.
It depends on, well, actually, I was going to say it depends on the agency, but even that's not true. Some agencies will let you teach a course wearing a different rebreather than what your student is, but regardless, you still have to be an instructor on the unit that your student is wearing, so...
That's kind of crazy, because to wrap my head around a scenario where you would want to be on a different unit doesn't even really kind of compute.
The only thing I could maybe in my own personal mind, and again, there's definitely instructors that have a lot more experience than me. I don't want to sound like that I know everything, but, I could see a situation like if, maybe the unit I was using that the student was using as well, like my personal one broke, and then switching over to the other unit just to be able to finish the course with the student, something like that would make sense in my mind, but...
Yeah, I can see that.
Again, there might be some other reasonings for this that I'm just not aware of.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting, we're, diving, I'm diving in the back mount, you're diving chest mount, and there's many of the components on that system and the basic principles that are the same. There's a lot that are different.
Yeah.
And so having just the repositioning of the counter lungs, the way that you're managing your ADV and your MAV, there's different muscle memory there. There's different.
We had a ton of
procedures.
conversations this week of how does that work and how does
Right.
this work and that's different on mine and where's this on yours?
Bailing out, even the gas planning, right? We went through
Yeah.
that. The gas planning was slightly different because we have different sort of fundamental approaches to your point that you might sound really similar on the surface, but really creates a fundamentally different diving experience.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was the other side of this course is just you really did knock it out of the park on all the knowledge you shared with us and just taking us through the dive planning every morning. Let's plan this dive, let's talk about it, let's see what's going to happen with these gases and this amount. Do we have enough bailout to do what we want to do and all this stuff? Really, really great. Really appreciate that.
We had some good dives. You guys definitely earned it, and I'm really, really happy you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, that's definitely the thing I try to achieve in these courses. Especially at this level, it's not just about okay, let's go deep, let's use some mixed gas. It's no, let's really unlock the potentials of our rebreathers, and be able to do very, very, very long dives, but yet only have just a minimal amount of decompression because, in my opinion, that's what, diving a rebreather is about.
Gotta love that Delta 5.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I know if I have a whole lot of other questions. I wouldn't hesitate to recommend Bonaire to anyone for any level of diving, but specifically for tech diving. Just for tech dive training, especially. Oh my God. Again, I can't.
Not having to get on a boat.
Yep.
Not having ridiculously long surfaces, not being cold.
Yep.
It was
Having something to look at while you're going to do, because I'm very much my mind goes 900 miles an hour, and on deco hangs, if I don't have something to look at or something to do, somebody to play rock paper scissors with, I'm gonna lose my mind. So yeah, it was awesome, very cool. Yeah, I would love to say, Zach, come to Kansas City and come dive with us, but you'll be grossly disappointed.
Hey, I'll try try anything one time, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But no, I really appreciate you guys coming out here. I look forward to getting to dive and train with you guys some more. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity of doing this podcast with you.
Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, no, I'll definitely be back. I think these two will be back.
100%. We'll be
Yeah.
back.
I think Blake was already booking his next trip last night.
Already looking at the dates.
So awesome. Well, Zack Richardson, TDS Bonaire, Technical Dive Services Bonaire. Got a website?
We do. You can find us online at tdsbonaire.com. If you have questions, things like that, feel free to email us at info@tdsbonaire.com as well.
Yeah.
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram. We're really stoked about diving, and so yeah, let us help you get into your next adventure.
Yeah. And so, and you operate out of Captain Don's. If somebody can you assist them with getting their whole trip set up, like pointing in the right direction or whatever?
Absolutely. We can help with accommodations, reservations. Even if it's something that we don't do personally, we'll direct you to the right people, whether it's car rentals, things like that. Really our thing is we're a small shop. We focus on customer service and just providing a good experience for people.
I will back that up 1,000%. There's times where I feel like I'm overstepping, like I'm being a pain in his ass, but you and Lucia are just always like, no, seriously, we're small, it's family, it's awesome. I'm like, okay, perfect. Like, it's great.
Completely.
Yeah.
Been well taken care of this week.
Yeah, for
above and
sure.
beyond.
For sure. Yeah. Well taken care of, gained a lot of knowledge, felt 1,000% safe all the time. It was great. So, yeah. Well, thanks, Zach.
Thank you guys.
Thanks a lot.
I'm just a clown, that's what they say. I guess my clothes